Hey, what's up guys, it's DarkArmedDuelist, and today I'm going to be doing some digital bug test hands. So I'm really excited to do this with you guys because this was actually suggested to me by one of my patrons, Gloomba. This deck is a really awesome Xyz based deck that uses your digital bug monsters to Xyz summon into some extremely powerful insect monsters. And I love the way the deck plays because as you use your digital bug monsters as materials for the Xyz summons, they will actually give the Xyz monsters added effects when you use them as materials, which is super cool. So without further ado guys, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell on there so you can become part of the notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below for all those awesome rewards like getting your name in the description in a single video, getting assigned cards in the mail, and even getting your requested deck profile every single month you're a patron along with test hands. So without further ado, let's get straight on into this. So this deck is a really fun deck that is actually pretty much entirely common. And I've gone for a different route for this deck, which is really amazing. I've actually gone for a trap build, which is really amazing. I love the way that it actually plays because one of the most powerful in archetype cards for digital bugs is actually a trap card called Bug Emergency, which is a really amazing card that will let you actually special summon back some of your digital bugs to your side of the field. You can also lock your opponent down with cards like Artifact Scythe, and even activate cards like Ice Dragon's Prison, backed up with one or two of your Xyz monsters, which is very, very cool for this particular deck. You guys know you've got a pile shuffle. That is dead rule number one. So let's go ahead and see what we can do with our first test hand. We're going to give the deck a quick little shuffle and see what we can pull off. So we're going to go ahead and draw. We're going to draw into a copy of Battle Wasp Twinbow the Attacker, Artifact Sanctum, a Dinomischus, a copy of the Cinnabit, and a copy of Twinbow the Attacker. So the really interesting thing about this deck is you actually have to use the digital bug monsters to link summon, or not to link summon, but actually to Xyz summon into your copies of your digital bug extra deck monsters because they require light monsters. But with recent releases of cards in the last year or so, we actually have gotten a really good boss monster for the deck that's called Cicada King. Cicada King really helps out with this deck a lot because this card is really easy to summon, which is why we actually play the copies of the Twinbow the Attacker. So what we're going to do is just normal summon out the copy of the Cinnabit, and once we do that, we're going to special summon out to our side of the field the copy of the Twinbow the Attacker, because this card has the ability during the main phase you can special summon this card from your hand, but you can't special summon monsters from the extract for the rest of the turn except for insects, which is totally fine. We're not worried about that. Then you're just going to set two cards on your field and then overlay both of these monsters into a copy of Cicada King. So the really neat thing about this is the copy of the digital bug monster will actually give it an added effect because it has the ability that what in this card, or you can special summon one level 3 insect monster from your deck in defense position when this card is changed from attack to defense position. But it also has the ability that an Xyz monster using this card as a material gains the effect that this card can attack all defense position monsters once each, which is really cool because all of your digital bug monsters have that ability to actually gain added effects to the Xyz monster that they are used to Xyz summon. Now the effect of your Cicada King is actually a negate because if the battle position of this card is changed, you can special summon an insect monster from your hand or graveyard in defense position. When a monster on the field activates its effects, you can detach your material from this card and then target that monster, negate its effects, and then make one insect monster on the field gain 500 defense, which is a really, really good effect to be able to do that. And I like to just go ahead and throw this card in defense position because I'm starting out as a very defensive play. Now the neat thing is about this particular setup is there wasn't a big place for our opponent to actually ash us or go in for any other hand trap plays. So at this point we're going to pass to the opponent, and when we pass over to the opponent we can immediately activate the copy of the Artifact Sanctum. Now the Artifact Sanctum is very good in this particular setup because you're immediately going to get to summon out that copy of Artifact Scythe, and the card that I was talking about in the intro is Bug Emergency. It's a super good trap card that we hopefully will get into in a little bit that basically just reborns two of your insect monsters back from the graveyard, which helps out this deck a lot to go in for additional plays. Now the other neat thing about it is after you summon out the Scythe, you're basically going to shut your opponent down from special summoning because it has the ability that your opponent cannot special summon, which is a really good effect from the extra deck. So when they do normal summon down a card, you can activate the copy of Dinomischus, discarding the copy of the Twinbow and being able to stop your opponent because this card is actually going to give us a banish, which is really, really good to be able to just banish a card. I really like that effect, and it helps out a lot. So when we go into the next turn, we're also going to be able to negate something, because we can get rid of the copy of the digital bug monster just to negate something with the copy of the Cicada King, giving it an additional 500 defense points, which is pretty good. I really like that effect just to give that card an additional 500. So at this point, we're going to go ahead and draw, and we're going to draw into an Imperial Order. So at this point, we pretty much got an insanely good lock. We have the copy of the Artifact Scythe, we have the copy of the Cicada King, that we can then change to attack position. If the battle position of this card is changed, you can special summon an insect monster from your hand or grave in defense position, so we can actually get back from the graveyard the copy of the digital bug monster back to our side of the field, which is going to help us out a little bit because we're going to get an additional monster on the field, which helps out a lot for this particular setup. But that's basically the basic plays of this deck, that you're going to be summoning out a rank 3 to your side of the field and backing it up with trap cards so you can go in for additional plays, and using cards like Imperial Order to shut down your opponent's entire field. So let's go ahead and see what we can do for the next one. As you guys can see, the deck is really fun to play. It's really consistent, but it does do some simple plays. You can go into other cards like your digital bug monsters if you can get out 2 light insect monsters, and you do play like 2 of each of them in the extract. If you guys would like to check out the deck profile, it is down in the description down below. So let's go ahead and shuffle up the deck again and see what we can do for the next test hand. So for the next test hand, we're going to go ahead and draw into a copy of Trap Trick, Bug Emergency, which is really good, a copy of Galaxy Worm, another Bug Emergency, and another Trap Trick, which is totally fine, but I think it's kind of funny that we drew them like 2 and then 2 and then 1, which is kind of cool, and this card can actually duplicate into 2. Let's see if we draw into a Galaxy Worm. Okay, that was kind of cool. So what we're going to do right off the bat is we're going to normal summon out the Galaxy Worm, and we're actually going to special summon out a Galaxy Worm, which is really weird. What's with 2s right now? But you're going to go ahead and special summon out a Galaxy Worm for the deck, because if you don't control another monster, you can just immediately special summon them out, and then set 4 back row. Now once we set that 4 back row, you can overlay both of these monsters on your side of the field, and you can kind of pick and choose which ones you want to summon. You can either summon out a copy of the digital bug monster, or you can actually summon out a different monster if you want to instead. It's totally up to you what you're going to summon in this position, but it's kind of, you know, really good to summon out your digital bug because it has the ability to once per turn during either player's turn, you can detach a material from this card and then target a monster your opponent controls and change its battle position. If you do, it has its effects negated until the end of the turn, which is pretty good just to be able to give you additional effect negation. And it also has the ability that once per turn, when this card is destroys an opponent's monster by battle and sends it to the graveyard, you can attach the destroyed monster's card as a material, which is pretty good to be able to just immediately go in for grabbing the card and equipping it to this card as a material. We then have the backup cards of the copies of the Trap Tricks that we have set, and we also have the copies of the Bug Emergencies, which comes up a lot in this deck. I usually summon out the rank 3 on my side of the field because if I do stop something, I can do a really fun play with this setup. So with this setup, we can actually go ahead and activate the copy of Trap Trick, and I usually like to grab that copy of Sanctum and banish it, and then immediately set a copy of Sanctum to my side of the field. Now, something important to keep in mind as you're going in for this particular play is that you can only activate 1 more trap for the rest of the turn. That's very important to keep in mind, and then you can actually use the copy of Sanctum because this card has the ability that it can be activated this turn. So we're going to go ahead and activate that copy of Sanctum and special summon out that copy of Artifact Scythe to lock down the opponent yet again, which is super helpful for this particular setup. So now that we've done that, you can actually use the effect of the digital bug monster to stop an opponent's monster by detaching both materials from it, which is totally fine because we don't super need those anyway. So at this point, their opponent's going to pass back to us, and we're going to draw for turn, which is a copy of Artifact Sanctum, which we will not need and is actually basically just kind of here at this point as a brick because we only played the 1 scythe. But that's not that big of a deal because you can actually use this card as discard cost if you need it. So the other really cool thing about this setup is you have the copy of your Bug Emergency set, which you can immediately activate. It lets you target 2 level 3 or lower insect monsters in the graveyard and special summon them, but their effects are negated, and you can banish this card, or you can banish this card and one XZ monster from your graveyard, and the levels of all of your level 3 insect monsters currently controlled become equal to the rank of that monster, which is really, really good because then you can kind of climb into different XZ monsters. So we can actually bring both of these back onto our side of the field, which we're immediately going to XZ summon with them on our side of the field to go in for an additional play, which is going to help us out a lot in the long term of the game because you have all sorts of really cool things that you can go into. But I really like to go into this card because the rank 3 digital bug monster is just really good because it also lets you during either player's turn detach 2 materials from it. You get to target that card and just immediately stop it, which is just really a great effect. And then later on you can, if you need to, climb into the copy of Core Bag if you want to XZ summon this card, because you can XZ summon this card by just detaching 2 materials from a rank 3 or 4 insect monster. So you can just immediately summon this card to your side of the field, detach both the materials from it, and then summon out the copy of the Core Bag to your side of the field if you want to summon that card as well, which is going to get you some really nice plays. I really like that setup because it's just going to get you more and more cards on your side of the field and going to get you even more setup. So let's go ahead and go in for the next test hand just to show you guys what we can do, because this deck is very consistent. I really love the way that it plays, and it's relatively budget too, which is what's really nice about this deck, because the majority of your digital bugs have actually been printed as commons, which is really cool. Actually, all of the main deck ones are commons, and there's only one super rare in the entire archetype, which is what's really neat. I really like that about this deck because it's very, very budget. It's very easy to pick up, and there's not anything really crazy expensive, and you can basically play any trap in the deck, because if you don't want to play the Artifact Sanctums, this deck is 41 cards. You can drop out the copy of Artifact Sanctums for something like a compulsory evacuation device if you can't afford the copies of Sanctum, which is really cool. And we actually just don't play that many spells in the deck because the archetype only has one spell and one trap, I believe, in the entire archetype. No, it has a field spell as well, but the field spell is not that great, and I don't play the other card that you have for the spells and traps. You really just need what I have in this particular build. There is other builds out there, but I really like this trap build because it helps me control the board. So let's go ahead and see what you can do. So for the next draw, we're going to draw into a copy of the B Trooper Scale. This card's really good because it's basically a Kage to Kage, because it's really good because if an insect monster is normal or special summon to your field, then you can special summon this card behind it, which is really helpful. Another copy of Sanctum, Dinomischus, a copy of the Web Soldier, and a copy of Trap Trick. So this is a pretty good setup right off the bat because we have 3 traps that we can set right off the bat, and we have the copy of the Web Soldier and the Scale on our hand that we can actually go in for more plays, because it's just going to let us special summon out an additional card. But it also has the ability that the copy of Web Soldier lets you once per turn target a face of attack position monster you control, change the defense, and you special summon a level 3 insect monster from your hand to defense position. So if we did have another one of our cards in our hand, we could go for an additional play. But let's go ahead and just normal summon out the copy of Web Soldier, special summon out our copy of the Scale, and then set 3, and then XZ summon into a copy of Cicada King, because the important thing about this deck is if you have 2 light ones, you can XZ summon out the copy of the Digital Bug rank 3, but if you don't, you're always going to summon out the Cicada King onto your side of the field, which is going to just give you an additional negate, which is really, really nice. So at this point, you do have the copies of the Dinomischus, you have the Trap Trick, and you have the copy of the Artifact Sanctum, which we're immediately going to activate that copy of Artifact Sanctum, which is going to just let us special summon from the deck a copy of the Artifact Scythe again and totally lock down the opponent's board, which is really nice. I really like that effect to be able to lock them down. And then you also have that copy of Trap Trick that you can activate to be able to banish a card from the deck and set a different one from the deck as well. So you can actually get rid of a copy of Ice Dragon's Prison if you want to go for something like that, and then set a copy of Ice Dragon's Prison on the field just to deal with some cards that your opponent might throw against you. If they do special summon out monsters and they just get rid of them, or tribute summon, or just get stuff off the field, you can use that card to be able to just immediately bring those cards back to your side of the field if you do want to be able to get them out and then be able to go in for additional play. So Ice Dragon's Prison is a very good card in this deck. It can be changed out if you don't want to use this card for another trap card, but it's still really good to play 3 traps in this particular deck in the position of the Ice Dragon's Prison. The only downside is you don't have a card to discard for the Dynamiscus, but the Dynamiscus does come in very handy because if you draw into the next turn and we draw into like an LED bug, you can actually flip this and discard this from your hand to be able to go in for additional plays. But the really nice thing about Cicada King is since we drew a copy of a monster, you can just detach the material. Say you detached to be able to stop your opponent from doing something, you can switch this card into attack position, special summon back the Web Soldier, and normal summon the copy of the LED bug, which the LED bug has a really neat effect. That once per turn, when this face-up card is changed from attack to defense, you can add a level 3 insect monster from your deck to your hand, which is a really good effect, but the copy of number 3 is going to let us special summon back our monster from the field, from the graveyard, which has the ability that if this card's battle position is changed, you can special summon an insect monster from your graveyard in defense position, which is pretty good, because now we can use the copy of Web Soldier, and the copy of Web Soldier says, hey, if this card is on your field, you can target a face-up insect monster that's in attack position and change to defense position, and then special summon from your hand in defense position an XZ monster, which is pretty good, or not an XZ monster, but a level 3 monster that's an insect from your hand. But we're basically just trying to get this back on our side of the field. If you had another monster in your hand, you could go in for more plays, but you don't, so you can just make an XZ monster here. Now the neat thing about this particular setup is by making the copy of our rank 3 here, it will actually gain 2 additional effects that when it destroys a monster, it gains 1,000, or gains the ability to draw a card. And then also, if the XZ monster is summoned, the defense position, or the defense of all face-up monsters currently that your opponent control becomes 0, and they're all changed to defense, so we can go in for some really good damage against the opponent, because we can go in with all of our monsters, and they have 0 defense. So you're going to get some real advantage off this particular setup, which is what's really nice. If we do draw in for the next turn, we're going to draw into a copy of the Cocoon, which is really good because it has the ability, if this card is on the field, then you can switch it to defense position, and then special summon a monster from the graveyard that is an insect level 3 monster, which is pretty good to be able to just immediately get it back and to be able to go in for additional XZ's plays. So let's go ahead and see what we can do for the next one, because as you guys can see, this deck is really easy to play. It is a lot of Artifact Sanctum, but if you don't want to play the Artifact Sanctum, you can drop the Scythe out like I stated and be able to play like 3 Compulse or 3 Storing Mirror Force or something else, even 3 Evenly Matches. If you want to play Evenly Match in here, you totally can. It's totally dependent on what you want to play, because you can just set a bunch of cards in the main phase too if you want to set a bunch of trap cards in the main phase too. So let's go ahead and see what we can do for the rest of our test hands. We're going to go ahead and shuffle up the deck and see what we can pull off. As you guys can see, you're pretty much just going in for 1 XZ monster and then passing against the opponent with a couple of back row set, which is the very simple thing of what this deck does. So let's go ahead and see what we can do for the next one. So we're going to go ahead and draw into a copy of Trap Trick, which pretty much equals any trap that we want from the deck. We're going to go ahead and draw into a Twin Bow the Attacker, a copy of Dynamiscus, the LED Bug, and a copy of Scale, which is still pretty good because we have 3 monsters we can summon to our side of the field, which is pretty good. So we're going to go ahead and normal summon out the copy of the LED Bug, and then you can special summon out the copy of the Scale and the copy of the Twin Bow. This will have to special summon itself right as soon as the copy of the LED Bug is on your side of the field, and then the copy of the Twin Bow will actually summon itself afterwards because it just special summons itself at any time. Then we can set both of these cards on our side of the field, and then if you want to, you can make an XZ play, which I usually like to XZ summon these 2 together into the copy of the Cicada King, and then you pass against the opponent. Now you might be wondering, why do we leave the copy of Scale on our side of the field? Well, this card has actually a little bit of a disruption, because when a monster your opponent controls activates its effect, quick effect, you contribute an insect monster and destroy it. So this card is actually a little bit of an interruption, which is why I play this card at 3 in this deck, because it's a free special summon of a level 3 insect, and it also gives me that added effect that when it's summoned to my side of the field and my opponent activates a monster effect, I contribute this card and then be able to destroy it, which is pretty good. I also have the copy of Trap Trick that can get us to the copy of Scythe if you want to get to the copy of Scythe, which is still pretty good and a pretty good setup that you're going to be able to go for, because once you get to that copy of Scythe, you're basically just going to shut down your opponent's entire turn, which is really important for a deck like this, to be able to shut down your opponent's turn, because you don't want them to get too far ahead ahead of you. So you can use cards like the Cicada King to stop your opponent from playing. You can use the copy of Scythe to be able to get you a 2200 attack point monster so they can't special summon from the extract. Then you also have cards like your copy of Dynamiscus that during the next turn, when we draw, you can just use the copy of Dynamiscus, discard whatever you draw, and then be able to banish the card, which is really cool. And you have that copy of Sanctum that you can get the copy of Scythe out on your side of the field and detach a card from this card to be able to stop your opponent. Change this card's battle position, and when you do, you get out another LED bug from the graveyard, which is what you detached, and then make another copy of the Cicada King on your side of the field, which just helps out a lot to go in for additional plays. With your copies of your Cicada King, you can link summon if you want to into copies of your Armor Horn, or summon out a copy of your Shinobi Insect if you want to summon out cards like that to your side of the field. I usually just like to load up the field with my Cicada Kings on my side of the field to be able to just stop my opponent over and over again, which is really important. But you can only use each effect of Cicada King once per turn, but you can just summon out one copy of it to your side of the field, and if you want to link summon, you can do that as well, which is really important to keep in mind about this deck. Or you can just leave the monsters on the field if you feel like you already have more attack points than you absolutely need. So let's go ahead and do one more test hand for this one and see what we can actually pull off. Just a really quick one, because these are actually really fast test hands for this deck, because it's basically set 3, make an XZ monster, and pass against the opponent. But let's go ahead and see what we can do. I want to show you guys one really quick combo for this deck, because we haven't actually drawn it. So let's go ahead and just show you guys a really easy combo. If you guys want to check out the deck profile, it is down in the description below. So we're going to go ahead and add that copy of the Red Strider to our hand, and once we do, we're just going to add any other digital bug to our hand. So you might be wondering as you're playing through this deck, well, how are you making those rank 5s? How are you making those rank 5s? And how are you making those rank 7s that I see in your extra deck, besides just detaching the materials off your copies of your other monsters? Well, let me show you guys the really simple play. So what you're going to do is you're going to use the copy of the Registrator in your hand, and what it does is when you normal summon a level 3 insect monster, you can special summon this card from your hand, and then you can make both this card and that monster either a 5 or a 7, and then you can special summon, or then if this card is special summoned from the hand, and you can change the battle position of one insect monster that you control, and then the next Z monster summoned with this effect gains 1000 attack points. So if we just normal summon out the copy of the Web Soldier, you can bring this card out to our side of the field and increase them to say either a 5 or a 7, and then overlay them both to go into any of your other cards. You can go in for a copy of Korbag, you can go into the copy of the Rhino, or you can even go in for a copy of the Exostag. It's totally up to you, and you might be wondering, well, why am I going to summon Exostag? Well, this card's actually really crazy, which is why I'm playing this card as a 1-of in here. It's actually kind of like a Relinquish, because it lets you detach a material from it to target a monster your opponent controls or in their graveyard and equip it to this card, and this card gains attack and defense equal to half the original attack and defense of the monsters equipped to it by this effect. So it's kind of like Relinquished in XZ form, which is why I like this card a lot in this deck. And you can basically make any of these cards that you want on top of this, which is really neat, to be able to make them a 5 or a 7, which is the main way that you're actually going to be XZ summoning these cards out to your side of the field, which is what's really cool, which is why I only play around, I play 2 of these, but it's really easy to detach and summon it later in the game, which is one of the really cool combos. So let's go ahead and shuffle up the deck and just see what we can do for one more test hand and see if we can pull off something really insane. So what we're going to do is we're going to draw into a copy of Scale, Ice Dragon's Prison, Cinnabit, a copy of Galaxy Worm, and a Twin Bow. So this is already really good. You can just normal summon out the copy of the Galaxy Worm to your side of the field, and then we're going to special summon out another copy of Galaxy Worm. I swear those like to stick together. We're going to go ahead and shuffle up the deck, which is why it's really important to go in with all of your plays and be able to pile shuffle every time. But the effect of the copy of the Scale is going to activate when the copy of the Worm is to summon, and you're going to special summon it out to your side of the field. And you can also special summon out that Twin Bow, the attacker, and set your copy of Ice Dragon. So once we do this, you can go ahead and overlay both of these into your copy of the rank 3 digital bug, and then overlay both of these into a copy of your Cicada King, which is going to help us out a lot, because now you have 2 XZ monsters on your side of the field backed up with an Ice Dragon's Prison, and then during the next turn, you're just going to detach a material off of either one of these or both of these to be able to go in for additional plays, especially when the battle position of the Cicada King changes. You're going to get a revive from the grave. And you can also use the copy of the next turn, these two, to be able to summon them out, and then overlay them, making them both 7 for the copy of the Rhino, which is really really a good boss monster for this deck as well, because if you do summon this card out to your side of the field, it has some really nice effects to spot remove cards off the field. I really like this card because when you summon it to your side of the field, it has the ability that you can use this card using an XZ material of a rank 5 or 6 insect type monster that you control, then using that card as a material. But it also has the ability to inflicts piercing damage to your opponent, and then also once per turn during either player's turn, you can detach a material from it and destroy the face-up monsters that your opponent controls with the higher defense, which is pretty good because it gives you additional pops. You can actually summon it kind of right off the bat because you can just detach off of these and stop the opponent from a card effect, or just be able to detach both of them to summon out the core bag and then immediately throw this on top as well, which is still pretty good because the core bag special summons itself from the extra deck by detaching the 2 materials. And then this card kind of works like a Gaia Charger because you can XZ summon this card by detaching the 2 materials from another card. So if you do have a third material after this card battles a card, you can get that extra XZ summon, which is what's really cool. So I think that's going to do it for the test hands for this one, guys. It's a really fun deck to play around with. You guys should definitely check it out because this deck is a really fun deck. I really love the way that it plays. It's really interesting. I'm glad Gloomba actually suggested this deck because this deck is just super fun to play around with, and it's really cheap. Like, it's a really cheap, fun deck to play around because just about everything is a common, and you basically can rank up without using rank up spells. You just have to detach 2 materials from your Digital Bug Xyz monsters to be able to throw them on top the upgraded version, which is really neat. So anyways, guys, this is DarkArmedDuelist. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell there so you can become part of the notification squad, and we'll see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys.